September rainfall was below to very much below average for most of Australia. Long-term rainfall deficiencies, record low for some periods, continue to severely limit water resources across the Murray-Darling Basin.
In Cumnock in central western New South Wales, James and Sally Morse were waiting for the latest announcement from the Morrison government about what it will do to ease the burden of what some meteorologists have called the worst drought in Australia's history.
We made the decision as a family unit to sell all our cows and calves, so they went down to Victoria in the high country there, so they're pretty happy on pretty good grass down there at the moment. But for us, the big decision was to not have too much pressure on the family going through summer. And we're probably sitting at about 50% of what our longer term average rainfall is. Like, we've got records going back to the early 1900s here.
The Millennium Drought hit parts of southern Australia for the best part of 15 years between 1996 and 2009. The current drought may not have lasted as long yet, but its sheer breadth has made it especially brutal. And now winter rains have failed for 3 years in a row, the first time ever. The geographic extent of the drought means it isn't just hitting one or two primary industries, it's hitting all of them. And coming less than a decade after the Millennium Drought, the current drought is cutting a savage path, not just through farming families, but rural towns and economies.
People leave town, okay, that's what happens. They leave town because there's no work and they go to the cities, and that takes the teachers away, some nurses away, if there's a hospital there, police away, every other service, and eventually guts the town.
Rod Gribble is just one person who is not on the land himself, but who is suffering the fallout of the drought. He's a contract harvester, currently working on a grain farm to the north of Griffith. But good harvests have been hard to come by, and overheads for this sort of equipment are very high.
And one of these pieces of gear behind me, it doesn't matter what colour they are, you know, there's $750,000 there easily. It's still a really, really tough business because the costs are high. The window of opportunity, in other words, to make money.
This afternoon, in what he calls the Canberra bubble, Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Natural Disasters Minister David Littleproud unveiled the government's latest efforts at addressing the hardship being experienced in the bush.
Of over $1 billion in new interest-free loans that will be made available to farmers and grazing families, as well as small businesses within local communities that are dependent and service the agricultural sector. And this gives them the massive breathing space to be able to make the investments, pay the employees on the farm, do the work that they need to do, purchase fodder, adjust their stock, make the decisions that they know they are going to need to take over the next few years to ensure that they get to the other side.
As long as we can, find the detail, see the detail, and it's not, too onerous, as in the paperwork, to, one, apply and be successful, I think that's a great idea and a great facility that the government has done.
We've obviously geared or trying to gear our business so we don't need to rely on government handouts and things like that. Obviously, we're going to take advantage of it while it's there.
Many of the measures announced today are new tranches of funding for existing schemes where the money has run out, designed to inject money into drought-hit communities via grants to councils and in emergency relief to households. The National Farmers Federation lobbied the government hard for a range of assistance measures, including exit loans, which it didn't get. But President Fiona Simpson says the important thing is getting the money out there.
Announcing them is one thing, and we're very grateful for the announcements the government has made, but I think getting that assistance out there in the field to satisfy the expectation that people have, and also the bodies that are meant to be delivering this assistance, is really, really important. And, we can't wait once these measures have been announced.
Beyond the interest-free loans, there's money for childcare and for schools in financial hardship, including fee relief for boarders. And there's a deal with South Australia which will release an extra 100 gigalitres of water at heavily discounted prices to allow for growing fodder, which can be sold on to other graziers.
School numbers at the local school have obviously dropped off a little bit in the last couple of years, and we've been a bit lucky as the local school there in that the government's guaranteed that extra teacher for next year as well. So that certainly helps us out there. But there's going to be longer term impacts on communities as the people that leave to chase employment elsewhere.
There have been groups hit by the drought who often fall through the cracks of assistance schemes, notably Indigenous communities. Businesses in the primary production chain, like Rod Gribbles, which have previously fallen through the cracks, seem to have been looked after this time. But there's been a history of drought assistance not always turning up as promised.
And that's why the government, I announced today, will provide $30 million to selected charities to continue their important work of supporting farmers, farm workers and farm suppliers facing drought-induced hardship. Organisations like the CWA and others who are doing a tremendous job, and we look forward to their participation in this program.
The CWA is the Country Women's Association, one of the most iconic organisations in the bush with a long history of supporting their communities. But when that $30 million dropped, the group found it actually would not be able to take part in distributing the money because it didn't meet the guidelines.
Would have required us to change our process and change our forms, and we've been successfully distributing funds. We'd already distributed probably close to $14 million or more across the states that we're already distributing aid, and quite successfully.
This isn't welfare. This is really just helping people make sure that they can maintain a viability.
Sometimes we get these big announcements, and then the process to actually get the funds on the ground, get the changes made, actually take a lot longer than what we would anticipate. And it's at this particular point in time, I don't think it's fair to people in the situation that they're in to actually promise something that can't be delivered pretty much straight away.
Besides the Country Women, the government has announced new allocations of household relief through Vinnies and the Salvos.
This drought is being hailed as the worst in living memory for most people.
Maury Ryan at Vinnies was responsible for getting some of the first round of household assistance out to farmers earlier this year. There was a top-up announced in September, which would allow up to another $3,000 per family for household bills. But red tape has intervened. Documentation to let organisations apply was only put up on government websites on Tuesday. The approval process is long and complicated.
We can't really start committing to people until we actually have the federal government money in the bank, and we're hoping that happens sooner rather than later.
It's all about certainty, now and in the future.
As a country, I believe we need to have a sort of a vision for how we'd like this country to look in 50 to 100 years' time, and I think that's lacked when you get a different government in for three years every 3 years, and you know it's essentially about buying votes and whatever to get them. Went over the neighbours for dinner on Tuesday night after Melbourne Cup and catch up. Like, I mean, we're still there, and we're just all doing the best we can within the circumstances.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.